Republican Congressman Byron Donalds appeared on ABC's this week with George Stephanopoulos, someone who Trump is very upset with lately. And Byron Donalds really failed to answer for, which makes sense given the absurdity of this, answer for Trump's attacks against Kamala Harris based on her identity. And while some people might think, let's move on from this, it's such a harmful subject. Absolutely true. But MAGA's not moving on from it. And I think the American people need to know, which is why I'm so glad to see George Stephanopoulos did not let up when Byron Donalds tried to shift off the topic. The American people need to see that on one end, Kamala Harris is making a policy, foundational, comprehensive, and substantive case against Donald Trump. And on the other hand, Trump is trying to degrade Kamala Harris's candidacy by questioning if she's really black or not. And that contrast says so much about the two candidates, which is why the fact that Trump keeps posting about this, posting her birth certificate and photos of her with her Indian relatives, it needs to be discussed, as gross as it is, as disgusting as we find this behavior. And so much credit, as you're going to see here, to George Stephanopoulos for not letting up and pressing Byron Donalds, who very much was uncomfortable and tried over and over in a panicked fashion to get off of this subject, because he knows how bad it is for Trump.
Why is former President Trump questioning the vice president's racial identity?
Well, first, George, in Chicago, he was responding to a question from, I believe, Rachel Scott. Like, this is really a phony controversy. I don't really care. Most people don't. But if we're going to be accurate, when Kamala Harris went into the United States Senate, it was AP that said she was the first Indian American United States senator. It was actually played up a lot when she came into the Senate. Now she's running nationally. Obviously, the campaign has shifted. They're talking much more about her father's heritage and her black identity. It doesn't really matter. The president mentioned it. What he also talks about far more frequently is the fact that Kamala Harris is the person who created this massive inflation, which is destroying black families, white families, Hispanic families.
And goes on to the normal attacks we addressed a gazillion times, so inaccurate. But let's focus on what's at issue here. Imagine that. And this is what George is going to point out throughout the interview. Oh, this is a dumb controversy. We shouldn't be talking about this. But also, I'm now going to perpetuate the exact same idea. No, there's no conspiracy here. There's no misleading on the part of Kamala Harris. Maybe, I don't even know what he's referring to in terms of the Associated Press reporting, but let's say the Associated Press took note of her being the first, if this is true, I'm actually not even sure, but Indian American senator elected to the Senate. Maybe that's because she was, but she wasn't the first black senator. So they were taking note of the historic first. But just because you don't include every part of someone's identity in every single description of them, that doesn't mean there's some misleading going on or a switch in identity. It makes no sense what they're saying. And the fact that he would have the audacity to say, oh, what he's alluding to is the media is just trying to stoke this up. Your guy keeps bringing it up. And then you just perpetuate the same idea with absolutely no validity to your argument. But let's go forward to when George Stephanopoulos jumps in.
You just repeated the slur again. If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There were a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue...
Sir, one second. You just did it. You just did it again.
Of the United States.
Why do you insist on questioning her racial identity?
You want me to talk?
I want you to answer my question.
George, now that you're done yelling at me, let me answer. He talked about it on the stage yesterday in Atlanta for 2 minutes? He spent more than 35, 40 minutes going after her record, talking about how radical of a senator that she was. She was the most liberal senator in the United States, in the United States Senate. That is a fact. He talked about the job that she did as vice president of the United States, a job, I will add, which has been a failure for the American people. I know you guys like to glom on to this that he talks about in jest or in a serious manner for about a minute or so, but what you do not cover is the litany of failures of Kamala Harris. That's what you're not covering, George.
So questioning somebody's racial identity for a couple minutes is okay?
George, I'm going to tell you again, he brought it up. AP is the one that wrote the headline when she first came in to the United States Senate. Didn't talk about her being black, talked about her being the first Indian American senator. AP brought that up. I mean, George, we could have this conversation for the entire segment, but none of this matters to the American people. What matters to the American people is, are we going to have the same policies of the Biden-Harris administration that has been destructive of the...
So I'll play more, and again, George continues, but I'm shocked by this. He goes, nobody cares about this, but also, this is a debate people are having online. People are trying to get to the bottom of it. Get to the bottom of what? What are you talking about? You and a few online weirdos, along with your presidential candidate, are having some weird debate that is alienating almost everyone. No one knows why the heck you're obsessed with this. We sort of know, but we don't understand even the political strategy behind it, much less the human morality. And it's just you, your little group. Stop making this the media. Look at the media. Fake news all over again. Pretending like I said something that I said. How dare they? It's so dishonest to say the media is doing something wrong by focusing on something outrageous you said, but I only said it for like 2 minutes and then all day, the day after that, and the next day on social media. But like, in terms of my speech, I also spent a bunch of hours across multiple events lying about her record. So why don't you talk about that either? First of all, we are talking about it. Second of all, yeah, when you say something super outrageous, that's going to get some attention. Trump's telling on himself. He's revealing part of his own character. And that's notable. And the fact that you even have to go here is notable because it proves your argument against Vice President Kamala Harris is so weak. This is what Trump does, as Chris Christie made the point of in a segment we'll talk about later on. This is the sign of a desperate flailing Trump. If he were confident in his battle against Kamala Harris politically, he wouldn't have to go here. This is what he does when he's desperate because he's scared because he's going to lose. Think about this. All the people who watch the show regularly, if you divide just the people who aren't subscribed, that group, if each and every one of you click the subscribe button today, we'd be instantly to 1 million subscribers. That'd be pretty cool. Click it if you haven't already. Thank you so much. Back to the video. Here's more.
The American people, or are we going to have the policies of the Trump administration, which put America first, had low inflation, prosperous Americans, no matter your
total economic collapse mishandled by Trump,
race, no matter your color, no matter your creed, and a foreign policy that kept America safe?
Okay, how long does he go on this? We've heard all that. Let's see George Stephanopoulos follow up.
Doesn't matter. I don't understand why you keep on repeating it, why the president keeps on repeating it, why those introducing the president yesterday
George,
keep on
actually,
repeating
I'm not
it.
the one who keeps repeating it. George, you're the one that's bringing it up now. That's
You've done it,
I understand why
sir.
you
You've done it.
up.
You've done it
Because,
3 times. Every single answer
George,
you gave me. Now let me finish, sir.
George,
Every single answer you gave, you repeated the slur.
Asked me, George. That's why I'm pushing back on you now. George, you asked me the question 3 times. I responded, but I'm
and every
about
single
what
time you
truly
repeat the
matters in this
slur.
election.
That is exactly my point. You simply can't say that it's wrong.
George, so then what you're saying, and I want to get off this topic because it's not the only thing that's going on. But George, now you're saying that
this is take note of this because it's such a dishonest media strategy. And I mean, something that we see often Republicans do on the media, not the media, which is to say the thing that's being asked about and is outrageous and you're being asked to condemn. So you keep the conversation going instead of saying, oh, you're absolutely right. That's horrible. I denounce what he's saying. That's wrong. I wish he would stop saying it. Now, can we talk about other things? But instead, you're saying, yeah, people are trying to get to the bottom of it. So we got to figure it out. The AP, they did say Indian because maybe it was only that was the historic part. but then saying you want to move on. I'm sure you do want to move on after you just disparage and spew garbage. You don't want that to be fact-checked. You don't want that to be addressed. I'm sure your low character is not something you want to be exposed on TV, but that's the job of a good interviewer.
AP is the one that slurred Kamala Harris, because those are the facts. You can go to the internet and look at the clips, George, if you want to, or we can talk about this now. I prefer to talk about the future of our country, because the American people...
And it goes on and on and on. Let's see, next time George jumps in. It's just a 5 minute, 12-second clip, so I can't play the whole thing.
She is Indian. She is black. You continue to repeat the fact that you continue to repeat the slur. I don't understand why you and the president do it, but it's clear you're not going to say that it's wrong. And you've now established that for our audience. Trump also said at the convention that he would pardon January 6 rioters.
Everybody look for themselves. Let's move on.
I've already said that. Go ahead.
On the internet, everybody. Let's move on. There we go.
So, you go on and repeat the slurs again. Trump also said at the...
Yeah. Great job to George Stephanopoulos. I know some of you will think, no, but he still let him go on for a very long time. You kind of have to, in some way, let him say the argument. But what George Stephanopoulos did so well is bring it back to the core question enough times where there's no doubt as an audience member about what Byron Donalds is doing and saying. Right? Because the thing that's annoying about letting a Republican or any politician filibuster and not really answer the question or say dishonest things and try to get out of it is that they can effectively convince a lot of audience members that the question was answered and they sort of forget, and now they're focusing on, oh yeah, wait, something about inflation. But George Stephanopoulos returned to it enough times where your brain goes, oh yeah, oh wait, what? That was your answer to that question? Oh my gosh. And that's what was done very nicely. And I'll remind you, because I did have that brief conversation with Byron Donalds, this whole, the way that he acts whenever he does get confronted and his unwillingness to just be honest in his responses, and then how flustered he gets whenever he does get pressed on something, showed up in this interview, and it showed up in my conversation with him.
One of the questions that I didn't hear an answer that was super clear from Trump on is so many people, dozens of people who left his administration, very different than Biden's administration, have said, this guy's not fit to be president. Yeah, it's right here. You can do it. Good man. So how do you explain that? So many people in the room for the most important decision saying this guy can't be anywhere close to the White House.
Well, first of all, let's say this. When you fire people, whether it's an administration or even out of a company, and I've noticed this in politics, political people don't think they should ever be fired, even when they're doing a bad job. A lot of times, which frustrates the American people, is political people fail and then they get promoted. And that's frankly what pisses a lot of people off. So if Donald Trump looked at people who were working for him early on and got rid of them and they have an axe to grind, I can't be concerned about
like
that.
Pence or all those people?
Or am I going to answer?
I give you a good amount of time.
Let me answer. Let me get to this. Now,
will you answer the question, though?
You ready? Here we go. Now, Alejandro Mayorkas is a failure. Our border is wide open. Tony Blinken is a failure. Israel is embroiled in war. Ukraine is embroiled in war. Pete Buttigieg, this dude took off for a month. Nobody even knew he was gone.
You're not talking about Trump's administration officials.
Are you talking or am I talking?
Taking a long route to it.
Bro, I know on your side,
Mike Pence. Let's go with just Mike Pence.
On your side, I know you guys will just use talking points, but when you get an educated answer, be patient and let me give it to you.
I want to hear Mike Pence, other administration officials, then I'm ready.
You go over there, and then when you're ready to have a conversation, come see me. Yes,
I'm ready. I'm here.
Yes, ma'am.
So I play that again for you because there I was doing what, given the professionalism and the environment and the type of interviews that are conducted on ABC, George Stephanopoulos wouldn't quite go there, where every single time it would have been justified to interrupt him, he interrupted him. He didn't quite do that, because that does quickly lead to, as you saw there, him just ending the interview. And probably George Stephanopoulos wanted to move on to other things as well. But that's what it looks like when you... that's how they react when you actually go, no. That you don't get barely any time to do the whole blah, 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 saying a bunch of words that sort of sound like they're coming out nicely, but they don't at all address the question, or they're dishonest in some way. And if interviewers interrupted every time dishonesty was deployed or the question wasn't being answered, a lot more interviews would end in a minute and 30 seconds, right? Which was this one. Because someone like Byron Donalds relies on leaning on these talking points that, again, if you don't pay attention, sound like he's making a solid point. He likes to bring up a lot in interviews. He'll say, I'm one of the best communicators in the Republican Party or something. He likes to make the point that he's a really good communicator. And to that, in terms of rhetorical efficacy, I sort of agree. You notice that there is a certain level of efficacy to how his words hit your ears. You're sort of like, oh yeah, that's nicely placed together. But if you actually listen to them, there's nothing effective about it. There's nothing admirable about it. And so often, what he's saying is as deranged as Marjorie Taylor Greene, who doesn't say it in as effective of a way, or is as dishonest or evasive as anyone else. And so I do wish people like him were pressed more. And you saw how that ended in this interview, where he just keeps going back. I should say to the George Stephanopoulos one. He just keeps going back to the same disparaging, the same questioning. That, by the way, I just want to continue to emphasize. We went through the details of it. All the way down to the percentage of Jamaicans that identify as black. We did that already. On the facts, they're wrong, but they don't care. They're not actually wanting to be informed and go, oh, okay, that's why. That's why sometimes in reporting, this part of her identity is mentioned or that part. That's why photos of her with one side of her family would be with Indian relatives. They're not actually wanting to learn or be informed or asking genuine questions. They're understanding the rage, the gross feelings, and the hate that's evoked because of the bigotry inside of a lot of people that this sort of language does evoke. And so that needs to be called out. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below.